want to welcome everybody this evening on this very hot evening in South Bend to Addiction in the Family. My name is Lisa Kelly. I'm Executive Director of Mental Health Awareness of Michiana. We're a nonprofit that focuses on eliminating stigma around mental illness and mental health concerns, and we work on building collaboration and also work on improving access to care. So we're delighted to welcome Chris Geyer tonight, who joins us from Elkhart. And Chris and Jim Geyer operate a small trucking company in Elkhart, Indiana. They have a loved one who has struggled with addiction and substance use disorder for over 12 years. After struggling to find education and support for themselves and their loved one, they stumbled upon PAL via the web. So Chris and Jim are trained facilitators through PAL. And am I getting that right, that you refer to it as PAL?
That's correct.
The first PAL meeting opened in December of 2017 in Elkhart and has been going strong since. PAL offers a free meeting every Tuesday evening from 6:30 to 8 at the home of SPA Women's Ministry Homes in Elkhart, Indiana. So, Chris, we're really delighted that you're here. This is such an important topic that affects, virtually every family. So we're delighted to welcome you, and I thank you for being here and sharing, your story and sharing, the resources that you have to offer.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think this is absolutely wonderful. A little while later, I'll tell you how much we struggled to connect with people and to get the word out about PAL. So I think this is just fantastic. Another way to get out some really important information. It is my hope that for anybody that's here tonight, through the information that I present, first of all, a warm welcome to everybody, but I really hope that you'll find something that resonates with you, something that helps you, or even better, something that gives you hope. That's something that PAL is all about, bringing hope to people. And it's something that I can tell you that we really struggled with, having any hope at all. I loved starting with this poem, so I hope that you'll indulge me. It takes about 3 minutes to get through it. It's called I Am the Parent of an Addict, and I Do Not Know the Author. This is not like being the parent of a child with cancer, diabetes, or AIDS. This is not like being the parent of a child who is serving with honor in a foreign land. This is not like being the parent of a child who lives no more and is mourned by all. I am the parent of an addict. There are no more marathons or fundraisers for this disease. No sweet girls selling cookies. There are no flags flying or bumper stickers proudly acknowledging my child's deeds. There are only tears and silent screams, the dread of what the next knock or phone call brings. I am the parent of an addict. I see my child and I am not glad, for though I ache to save my child, with relief I let them go. I see my child with fear and suspicion, as I hear all they say, but I can but endlessly hope. I see my child and wonder, will I ever know them again, see them again? I am the parent of an addict. They say it's not my fault, that I did nothing wrong. There's little I can do. They say it's not my child's fault, just a disease of disgrace with no pity, no cure. They say be strong, but my life stands still, and my friends and my relatives move on. I am the parent of an addict. I watch all my family suffer with sorrow and pain through the addiction. I watch the evening news and cringe as another young family's adult child is arrested and called scum. I watch a young man beg for change for food and know that he could be my own. I am the parent of an addict. I remember smiles and I look at pictures of my sweet child. I remember the hugs and the kisses, the scraped knees, the soccer games. I remember their plans, their goals, their hopes, and their dreams. I am the parent of an addict. I look for my child to come home, to call, so I do not sleep. I look for my child to find the strength to battle this terrible disease. I look for solace, for help, for a cure, and I grasp at what straws of promise I can. I am the parent of an addict. And I hope in the endless hope of a future free from drugs. And I hope in the restless sleep of a way out of this nightmare. And I hope, and I pray, and I cry, and I plead, but always I love my child. Addiction affects the entire family. The cost of substance abuse is estimated to be at $520 billion per year. That's healthcare, lost wages, and treatment, but there is no price that you can put on the suffering and grief of the families and loved ones that experience it. So I finally got to a point where I can actually read that without breaking down. So that's a plus for me. So as mentioned, my name is Chris. My husband, Jim, and I started a PAL group about 6 years ago. We have a small trucking business here in Elkhart. We have 2 children, 2 grandchildren. And about 6 years ago, I got up one morning and I really felt like I wasn't suicidal, but I knew that what I was experiencing was not something that I really wanted to live anymore. It was, if you can understand how grief works, it was the deepest, darkest pit of grief. And I couldn't see any way out of it. I didn't know a way out of it. This had been going on for quite some time when that realization came to me that morning, and I thought, I need help. I didn't know where to look for the help. So there began the search online, really, to find any kind of support, any kind of help we could find. There were no Al-Anon meetings in our area at that time. And we did bump into PAL. So PAL is Parents of Addicted Loved Ones, and it's a support group. It's parents helping parents. We learn education and support. And I'll tell you later a little more in detail about PAL and how it works. But I think it's really special because it's not that there's anything wrong with a 12-step group. I think they're fantastic. But PAL basically brings people together that are experiencing exactly what you're experiencing, who they've been through it, they understand it, and we work it through together. One of the most common things that we see with parents coming in, of course, is the shame, the guilt. We always think that it's something that we've done wrong until we learn better. And that's part of what PAL does, is it helps us be educated about what addiction really is. There's a specific movie that we show called Pleasure Unwoven by Dr. Kevin McCauley. And the first few times that I saw that movie, it explains addiction and how it's categorized, how and why it's categorized as a disease and not a moral failing or a parental failing or a family failing. It was life-changing for me. I think every parent that comes really believes that they've done something wrong. We do enable, but we don't realize that until later. And we'll talk a little bit more about enabling and some of those behaviors that all of us parents have. So probably the easiest way is to just tell you that the emotions that I felt in the beginning, I was probably one of those people that would have said to you that something like this would not have happened in my family. And I'm ashamed to say that, but it's the truth. I felt like that only happened to other families. It wasn't something that was going to happen in our family. We were a good family. We were a solid family. We had good morals. It's just not something that could ever happen in my family. But we have, of course, evidence that it can happen to anybody's family. Every one of our pals that comes in feels the same way. There's the embarrassment, the shame, the stigma, of course, that comes along with addiction and mental health issues, and the anger of how could that happen? How could I have let that happen? How I didn't see that happening, and the self-blame. So every family goes through these same emotions. We know, of course, that grief is displayed with many different emotions. I think we run the gambit of emotions, but I think grief ended up being the deepest one for me. And I think that, of course, I'm much better. It's 6 years later, and I've learned so much. And it's been life changing. It's been life changing for my family, my marriage. And the hope is the more educated that we become ourselves, when our behaviors start to change, there's the hope that our loved ones' behaviors might change as well. We become so codependent, and in the midst of all of the drama, the violence that can happen within the family and the homes when drugs are involved, the theft. I could go on and tell you a lot of stories about a lot of our families. Some of our families have ended up with their loved ones living in their backyard in a tent. We've had homelessness, you name it, we've had it. So the biggest part of PAL is, of course, the one thing that all of us want as parents is for our loved ones to get the help that they need. I think the life-changing moment is when you realize that you can't do that for them. We think we can because we're parents, and we raise them, and we give them advice and tell them how to do things, from the time that they're babies till they're grown up. And so we think, and I thought that if my daughter would just listen, I knew that I had the answer for her. Little did I know that that was not the case. So I'll share some slides with you in just a few minutes. We'll talk about PAL more in depth, but again, some of the behaviors, and I call them enabling behaviors, that I myself went through. You could find me probably all hours of the day and night driving town looking for my loved one. I was never very successful at that, but I felt like that was my mission to do that. I had a notebook. The hours that I spent on the phone with recovery centers, with treatment centers. And I would actually, get an admission date for her. And, I just knew that what I had to do was I had to get her there. It was my responsibility to get her there. And I was failing her as a parent if I didn't do that. So countless hours of on the phone work, driving around to find her. And of course, a lot of our kids end up in the criminal justice system. And that is ultimately what can be a springboard for some, sadly. I mean, it was in our case. I mean, it was a good thing, bad thing, but a good thing. And what comes of that is, in our case, for example, giving your loved one enough time behind bars in an environment, and I'm not saying that drugs aren't, or can't be in our jails, but giving them enough sober time to where their brain starts working a little bit better, and they might start making a little bit more reasonable decisions. Or in our case, the court-ordered treatment was what really was the springboard to help her. So we're probably the only group of people that would be happy if our loved ones get arrested, because we know where they're at that night. They've got a place to sleep, they've got a hot meal, and we know where they are. I can tell you that's the best night's sleep I had in a very long time, when I knew that she was behind bars. And that's sad. But like I said, a lot of times it is a springboard to where they do get treatment and they can change their lives. They have the opportunity to do that. And I know that Elkhart County, St. Joe County have come a long way in drug court. So I'm so happy that we have that to offer our loved ones. It's great. Oh, so the loved ones don't go to treatment voluntarily. I think we all know that. The two most important things that I think I would want to share with you about your family, if you have a loved one that's in addiction, is please educate yourself. Wherever you can find that education, please, please educate yourself. Educate yourself about the truth about addiction. It's not a moral failing. You were not a bad parent. This isn't something that a lack of something in your family household caused. I do feel like genetics in our case played a large part. I think mental health played another very large part. And we had the recipe for addiction. It's so easy to step back and say, oh man, if I had known. One of the first things that my husband and I did early on, because we were dealing with our loved ones' mental health issues, in she was in treatment, in counseling and, mental health for several years. But we went to the NAMI classes, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, family to family classes. And I'll tell you, that was probably a springboard for us to really understanding more about mental health. It just, I tell you, it opened up so much for us. We absolutely recommend that for all of our people that come to our PAL group. There's such a connection and interweaving between mental health and addiction that we don't want to forget that component. I think it's vital. So we do recommend that people do that. And like I said, it was fantastic for us to be able to understand that a little bit better. And it also gave us ideas about different ways of approaching her, because what we were doing was definitely not working. So, just talking to her in a different way, understanding the mental health a little bit better. And even now we go back to our big book and we reference it and we look through it when we might be struggling a little bit. So it's a good resource for the future. You can keep it after you go through the classes. So we definitely recommend it. So educate yourself in mental health, in addiction. I mentioned the movie earlier. We show that in our classes called Pleasure Unwoven. Dr. Kevin McCauley, he's a doctor who struggled with addiction himself. So he wanted to know the nitty gritty about why and how it works. So it can get information heavy at times, but every time we see it, something else sticks. And it's just a little bit more information every time you see it. And number two, in those two things that I would like to present are begin your own recovery journey. I know that it's not easy to understand that we as a family or we as parents are codependent and it requires our own recovery, and that our journey, if we're serious about that and we're serious about wanting to help our kids, changing our behaviors, changing the way we interact, the way we do or don't help them. We help them in healthy ways rather than the ways that we're accustomed to. It's not natural for us to help them in a healthy way when it comes to addiction. For example, I thought it was a good thing, but I wasn't going to give my daughter money anymore because I knew what she was spending it on. So I'm just not going to give her money. So I would buy food or clothes or gas in a car. What I was really doing was freeing up an expense that she had so that she would have money for her drugs. So what I thought was healthy really wasn't healthy. And it was one of those difficult things that you have to do, excuse me, in learning to say no in a healthy way. So education and start your recovery journey. When we began facilitating for PAL, we laugh about this now, but it wasn't funny then. Not real funny. My husband and I, for 3 months, nobody came. So we sat, but you know what? I look at it now as such a blessing because we needed that information so badly. So we would sit and we would go through the lessons with PAL, just like there were other people there. and we'd be looking out the window to see if anybody's coming. And, it's like 20 after, well, nobody's coming. And we always bought cookies to share with everybody. We ended up taking those cookies home. But it gave us an opportunity to really sit down and go through the information that we so desperately needed. PAL has 9 core lessons with 2 or 3 extra supplemental lessons, and we'll talk about those. We also have guest speakers. We are so blessed to have people that will come and help us. We've had people from Oakland come and give us training on Narcan. We have people from the recovery community who've been in recovery for quite a while come and share their testimony. We just recently had Dr. Zabukovich. Most people are familiar with him. He's a family physician, but he also helps the community with those who are struggling with substance use disorder. He actually came last Tuesday to our PAL meeting and just sat and talked to us around the table and really gave us a good insight about medication-assisted treatment and how that works and maybe what it doesn't work for. So it was wonderful to hear that from him, and a doctor that actually took an hour and a half out of his time to come and be with us. So we have a lot of people who have graciously come and just helped us in our recovery journey. It is a hope that when we change, and I'll probably repeat this several times, but when we change our own behaviors, it can lead to our loved ones changing their behaviors too. And that is the hope. And most all of our pals that come to our meeting are in that same pit that I talked about earlier, that pit of guilt, despair, shame, whatever label you want to give it. So as we start learning more, we start at our own pace, looking at our own lives and seeing what we can do in hopes that, number one, we find joy in life again. We find that hope that we used to have, that we don't normally have in a situation like this. And then sometimes, like I said, it does help our loved one. When we're not enabling them, it's definitely helpful too. Excuse me, I've gotten a frog in my throat. So I'm going to share my screen with you if I can do that tonight. Excuse me. Right. Move this out of the way here. And we'll start sharing maybe from the beginning. Okay. Well, now there we go. All right. Takes me a little bit to get it going here. Sorry. Okay. So we'll talk about PAL. How PAL can help. So PAL was founded, it actually began in 2006. In 2015, it became a nonprofit. And then in 2018, it received its 501c3 status. PAL uses evidence-based curriculum, peer-to-peer support, and this gives parents hope and the tools that they need to handle the challenges in a healthy manner. And as I said before, oftentimes the addicted loved one can respond successfully by pursuing their own recovery. Bear with me a second. All right. And I believe that Lisa already told you about our weekly meetings. We meet at SPA, which is at 3040 Toledo Road in Elkhart, Tuesdays from 6:30 to 8. They graciously host us and give us a place to meet. They are a wonderful organization. This gentleman is named Mike Speakman. He is the creator, the founder of PAL. He also wrote this book, which is an amazing book. We have 1 or 2 people who graciously give us money every month. We save our money in PAL and we buy books so that when people come to our meetings, we can give away this book. And we do a table at Recover Michiana Fest every year. And we just try and, for people who really are interested, we hand out the books as well. So Mike Speakman, he's a licensed substance abuse counselor, and he's been doing that since 1988. So there is no other relationship like that between the parent and a child. When we bring those little babies into the world, they don't come with instructions. And I think that it's a really tough challenge as well when we start not just the teenage issues, but when we start seeing behaviors that we have no direction for. Um, in addiction, for some reason, the roles are reversed. So um, parents actually are in the situation where they're more like the child, and the parent is, or excuse me, the child is more like the parent. So in how we learn about why this happens, how does it happen, and more importantly, what can we do about it? And I believe that's true in codependency as well. That's a role reversal. So PAL itself is parents helping parents. We focus on the unique challenges of parents and spouses to an adult addict. And parents struggle with the distinction between helping and enabling. I think that is one of the biggest things that we all struggle with. So we go through the lessons, and we'll see those in just a little bit. And every time we do a lesson, so it's been 6 years of lessons for Jim and I. And so, at one point I thought, gosh, I've been through these 100 times, but every time I go through them, there's something that specifically sticks with me for that particular moment. Maybe our situation has changed with our loved one, and there's something else valuable there that I need to learn. So every lesson has tons of information that we can learn from. PAL itself is free to anyone 18 and older who has a family member suffering from addiction issues. PAL uses evidence-based curriculum on substance abuse, recovery, and related topics. It is focused on education and supporting PAL members. PAL is not a 12-step program. I'm very supportive of 12-step programs. At PAL, we don't have any particular guideline that says you need to do this at a certain time or not do this at a certain time or achieve anything at any given moment. It's very individual as to the decisions that we make or the changes that we may or may not make. One of the things that we strive for our PALs to understand is that no matter where you are in your recovery journey with your loved one, when you're at our meeting, nobody's going to tell you that you should be doing something different. That's a very personal journey, especially with their kids. You as a parent, you're the one that has to sleep with that at night, whatever decision that you may choose to make when it's related to your loved one. I want to plug in self-care here. Self-care is so important. And for me, it's something that I've always struggled with. So one of the things we try and really reinforce with everybody that comes to our meetings, the importance of taking care of yourself. And many of our PALs have had or seen or experienced in their family detrimental effects to their health because of the stress that they go through during these addiction circumstances. So it can be very challenging and very trying for our health. So it's really important that we take care of ourselves. So this is going to list for us those 9 lessons that I talked about, the 9 core lessons. The addiction cycle, traits and behaviors, delayed emotional growth. We're going to look at that one in a little more detail. The role of the family, releasing your loved one, healthy emotional detachment, setting realistic boundaries, financial strings, recognizing relapse. And there's a lot of other topics that we talk about as well, but these are the 9 core lessons you'll get when you come to PAL. We talked about that delayed emotional growth. And so what I've done, I just stuck in here the actual lesson that you would get if you came to our PAL meeting, and we would do this lesson together as a group. So we pass out the paper and we go through and we read it, and then we talk about it. We see how it applies to us. One thing that we have noticed with all of our group, with all of our loved ones and all the people that come to PAL, this particular lesson that talks about the traits of delayed emotional growth is common. There isn't anyone that has come to our group that has said, I recognize this in my loved one, in my person that's dealing with addiction. I just don't see this. And we have we've had a range of age 17 through 50 for addicted loved ones. So, it really varies. And this is something that we see with all of them. Their morals are morals of convenience. They have immature self-centeredness. They never left home emotionally. We talk about the ABCs of addiction and delayed emotional growth. It's anything but change. And then over on the right side, we talk about developing those adult abilities. So it shows us on the left, traits of delayed emotional growth. On the right, what we would see if our loved one was developing adult abilities. So we check off the traits that we recognize in our loved one, having healthy morals, and what those are. They're less self-centered and more tolerant. And they're leaving home and becoming their own person. The ABCs of recovery from both addiction and delayed emotional growth is ask for help, be willing to listen, choose to do what is suggested. One of the questions we get often is, how long will this take? All my loved ones in their 40s, how long will it take? And the answer is, it just takes as long as it takes. All right. So this talks a little bit about PAL, the organization. I told you earlier, it was a nonprofit in 2015. The states that are shaded kind of show you where the PAL meetings are. And this has not been updated. So there are actually, I believe, 178 meetings in 38 states right now. There are guiding principles, 4 guiding principles of PAL: confidentiality, respect, acceptance, and support. Anybody that comes to our meeting, it's a private meeting. We don't share names. We don't share phone numbers. If a person wants to share that with someone after the meeting, we do that. But it's all very private. We want PAL to be a place where you can share things and know that they're safe and they stay in that environment and people aren't, sharing where they shouldn't. So we are a very private organization. We do have a Facebook page. It's Michiana PAL Group, for the PAL group that's here in Elkhart. And there we share lots of information about PAL. Any other recovery type information that we can give, we'll post that on our Facebook page. We try, as far as the lessons and the education, is one component of PAL. Resources, if we have resources for treatment centers or counselors or anything that we can get our hands on, we make sure that we make those resources available to our PALs when they come. And I just forgot the next thing that I was going to say. Sorry. It'll come to me in a minute. So that's PAL, the organization. This is going to tell you how PAL is organized. PAL gives support through education and networking. We recognize the importance of interaction between group members and peers, offering suggestions instead of advice. Everything that's shared within PAL is really just a suggestion. It's great to know what other people have experienced. Maybe a loved one went to a specific treatment center and didn't have such a great experience there. Maybe they did fantastic there. So that's all information that we network with each other and we share in support of everybody that's in our group going through the same thing. So why is PAL important to the community? We talked earlier about the age of the children that we see for the adults that attend PAL between 19 and 50. And many times the parents and loved ones that care for adult addicts, we do that to the detriment of our own physical and mental well-being. And I can definitely attest to that. We talked about self-care and how important that is for us to get healthy. If we're not healthy, we can't help our loved ones. So PAL did go through some evaluation, and that has been done by the Northern Arizona University. And this tells you who did the evaluation, if you're interested in that. The initial evaluation was started in the fall of 2017, and the purpose was to review the program and determine its efficacy and and quantify how it impacted the lives of parents who attend the PAL meetings. The research questions are listed here. How effective was PAL in providing evidence-based substance abuse support program? How effective is PAL in improving the well-being of PAL members, mental health, physical health? How effective is PAL in educating members on strategies to support their addicted loved ones' recovery? Strategies to reduce enabling and strategies to reduce codependency. And these are the findings. The PAL program follows evidence-based practices. Substances abused by the loved ones support the current drug trends. Abuse of prescription pain medication and heroin. The PAL program outcomes are supported. The PAL members report learning strategies to reduce parental enabling and codependency. PAL members report an improvement in mental and physical health. And I can definitely attest to that. Our lives, my life, is definitely different from 6 years ago. There is an ongoing research project at PAL. It's evaluating the effectiveness of PAL in promoting the addict's recovery. It is also evaluating PAL according to best practices using accepted mental health instruments. There are pre and post test studies of new PAL participants. This is a cover of Money magazine. And the picture here is the CEO of PAL. His name is Kim Humphrey, and this is his wife. Both of their sons were very, very deeply involved in addiction. And they're both in recovery now. So it's a really happy story. It's a great story. But we were very blessed, the PAL organization, to have Money magazine cover this so we could get the word out about PAL. Wonderful, wonderful people supporting the PAL organization. There is hope. PAL's mission is to provide hope through education, support to parents of addicted loved ones. Our vision is to make PAL meetings available to all parents of addicted loved ones. Oop, I didn't want you to see that yet. So I wanted to stop a minute and tell you that my husband and I, when we started doing this, one of the things that we talked about together was, what was our goal? I mean, obviously, we really needed the information very badly, but to actually facilitate a meeting that's a lot of work. I mean, every week for 6 years, what was our goal? And if we could reach just one other family, if we could help one other family, then it was all worth it. And I believe at this point I believe that we've got 2 or 3 families that would tell you that PAL has been really good for them. I believe there was a gentleman named Thomas, and I'm not real good at looking at the chat and everything at the same time, but I believe he's from Plymouth. And I wanted to tell you that you may already know this, that David's Courage hosts a PAL meeting. I think it's every other Wednesday, maybe the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of the month. So if you're looking for a PAL meeting in your area, there is one there. So if you were to go to the PAL website, which is palgroup.org, you can find up in the top right-hand corner, find a meeting link. So if you click on that link, there's a drop down, and then you can search by zip code, you can search by state, and it's going to populate and show you where all the meetings are at. There are also phone-in meetings. There used to be Zoom. I'm not sure if there is anymore, but there are phone-in meetings, I think Monday through at least 4 days a week. Let's say it that way. So a phone-in meeting, if there's not a meeting in your area, or you know somebody that just really, really needs more help, you can jump on a phone meeting. So you'll get exactly the same thing just through the phone. So you'll get the meeting, you'll get the lesson. They'll send you the lesson information like the day ahead of time, so you can print it out, take a look at it. And you get that support from other parents who are going through exactly what you're going through. So if a meeting isn't convenient for you. And some people just don't want to go. It takes a lot of courage and for me, a lot of desperation um, to actually go to a meeting. So kudos for everybody that does go, because I really feel like it takes a lot to do that. So if you're just a person that just doesn't want to do that, jump on a phone meeting. There's help. There's hope. There's a way to get the information, support, and education that you need. So I just want to make sure that I plug that. There aren't meetings in every state, but there is a way to get the information. And so this, as the last slide I wanted to share, this is a picture of our beautiful daughter. Up here in the top right-hand corner, this is a picture a couple years ago of our table at Recover Michiana Fest. And then down here at the bottom, the South Bend Tribune in 2018 was so gracious, and they gave us an article. We talked to the writer of the article, and we were so excited because I went and got a South Bend Tribune. I was flipping through it. I expected to flip through it because I thought our art story would be buried in the back somewhere. And little did I know, but it was on the front page of the South Bend Tribune. So that really opened the door for us. I think it was probably the week after that paper that we started getting people at our meeting. So it was really great. And it's been really, really a fantastic resource for families ever since. So we hope to keep it going. We talked about addiction. I wanted to just say a little bit about hope and PAL bringing hope through education and support. And when I think about our group and I think about all the people that sit around the table, I can tell you that at different times of the year, depending, we know that addiction is a lifelong disease. So it's something that has to be monitored and treated all the time. So there's ebbs and flows. Sometimes our loved ones are in recovery and then sometimes they relapse. But I think right now with our group, it's probably a 50-50 with loved ones not in recovery and loved ones in recovery. And to me, it's just fantastic as far as the statistics are concerned with our group, because usually, and at one time, it was all of them just very active in addiction. So we are seeing really good results with our kids. Some of them have gone through their addiction, they've gotten sober, and now they're working at a treatment center and they're helping other people because they've walked that path. So we've had really, really a lot of blessings as far as that is concerned. And sadly, on the other hand, we have lost people too. And it bears saying that because of the disease and the nature of the disease, we don't always get to keep all of them, but we're keeping the majority of them right now. So that's what I've prepared for you. I'm hoping that you guys have got some questions that you might want to talk about. Again, here's the email for palgroup.org. That's the national site. Email address palgroup.org, info@palgroup.org, and then the website palgroup.org. Michiana PAL Group at Gmail is how you can reach me directly. Again, that Facebook page is Michiana PAL Group. If you want, it's a private group. So if you want to join, just ask to join. And I'm always open for anybody if you need to email questions or reach out any way you can. You want to Facebook, that's fine too. But we're always open, open.
Chris, I'm wondering if I could ask the first question as folks have a chance to type in the chat box. I know that you're focusing on the support that's provided by PAL, the PAL groups, but I'm wondering if you could just speak to what a lot of parents struggle with, which is how do you even start to talk to your kid about what you think is happening, knowing that they may not be honest with you about what actually is happening. So I don't know if you could talk at all about, just the communication side of just beginning to have that conversation with your kid.
I think first and foremost, when I think about the answer to that question now, versus 6 years ago, I think that it would have happened absolutely differently. So what happened with me 6 years ago, when I didn't have the education, when I didn't know what I know now about addiction, I could, it, that confrontation rather than discussion is how that turned out. Um, Depending on the age of your loved one, I think that's going to make a difference too. If you have a loved one that is under 18, boy, that's fantastic, because you can still control that situation a little bit. When they become an adult, when they're over 18, they can make their own decisions. So in approaching my loved one, I'm sorry, I haven't got rid of this yet. Excuse me. When I approached my daughter early on, let's say 4 years ago, I didn't even know that methamphetamine was one of the worst drugs that she could use. I didn't know how hard it was. I just thought that if I said, well, what are you doing? Why are you choosing to do that? I thought she could just stop doing that just because I asked her to do that. So much more has come out in the last 6 years about educating people about substance use disorder, about addiction. I think that number one, education is the key. I think once you're educated more and you know that it's not just something that they can quit, whether it's heroin, whether it's meth, whether it's fentanyl, whether it's weed, it is not just something that they can quit. What happens to the brain and the chemicals in the brain is detrimental. They are no longer able to make good decisions when they have done so much damage to the brain by using. So approaching them, I think do it with love. I think that's the best piece of advice I could give, is do it with love and tell them, I'm worried, I'm concerned, I see these behaviors. I think maybe this is happening. I want you to know that I love you. This is a disease. There's treatment for it. And I want to do whatever I can do to help you get better. So learning about how we help them in a healthy way versus, some of the ways that we commonly think we're helping our kids. I talked about a couple of those. I think that's the most important thing. Like I said, that would have been different for me 4 years ago, the way I approached when I began my own recovery journey and I got educated about addiction. I think it would change. If I had that conversation with her today, it would be absolutely different than it was 4 years ago. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I'm encouraging everybody to type questions in the chat box if you have any. But I do have another one.
Yeah.
During this time, marijuana permission, it's legal in surrounding states, and for a lot of young people, they're not really seeing it as a problem. And that's a hard one for parents to to say, I think this is a problem for you to use when you've got laws that are basically saying, maybe it's okay.
Right. I agree with you. Um, I'm not a proponent. I think that, society and the laws changing, I think it's sad. I don't understand the science behind allowing it. There's so much science behind how it changes the brain, and not in a good way. The damage that's done to the brain. I do not understand that. I'm grateful that my kids are older and I don't have to deal with that, because that's tough. That's really, really tough.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I think that people are probably getting ready for dinner.
That's
So
right.
people
That's
are
okay.
starting to leave the webinar.
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but I do want attendees to know that there's a link for the evaluation that I put in the chat box, and you will be getting